back home, but back way nice and slow. Feel the ebb and flow. Please get sucked out to sea. I wonder where you are, 'cause you know I take these things kinda extra hard. This back and forth will take me anywhere I need to be. I can't need you anymore. You're out there, you're on your own, and I can't need you anymore. They say all good things must end, but it's been too long since I've seen one again. It's over now, you played your role, now it's time to dissipate. I may not get very far, let's be honest, I will never be a star. But holding on, take me anywhere it needs to be. Take a good look, 'cause I'll be gone. I can't need you anymore. You're out there, you're on your own, and I can't need you anymore. Tell me I'm all wrong. Anything to make it easier. Oh, keep your secret songs, 'cause I can't hear them anymore. Oh, tell me when it's all done. Take these memories and burn them all, one by one. 'Cause it's not fair to keep holding on. I can't need you anymore. 'Cause you're out there, you're on your own, and I can't need you anymore. 'Cause it's not fair to keep holding on. Take your words back home, back way nice and slow. Feel the ebb and flow, but please get sucked out to sea.
No, it's not funny for me, but I don't care. Good morning for you, good evening for me.
As Lurch would say, you ring. Oh, I've been super busy. Yes, as long as you hear the birds, I'm okay. Oh wow, that's pretty artwork. What's that?
No, it isn't.
I'm logging into the cavern. Oh, I'm getting an update.
Okay, here's a microphone test. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So to answer the question about the background I have up today, that's the central area of the age of Purane. Pyrenees belonged to the members of the Guild of Fine Artists and was meant to be a place where they could go in order to be creative. Each one of the cells that you see surrounding the central tower, which was kind of a headquarters place, is an area where they could modify the terrain and features to suit themselves. The Age also had linking books to, I believe it was 3 other ages, which were devoted to producing materials such as canvas, gesso, and I forget what the third one was.
I can't hear you anymore. Are you talking?
Not at the moment.
I don't hear you at all. Are you talking?
No. Can you hear me at the moment?
I hear Murphac. Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, they're hearing me in the stream. Can you hear me, Murphac?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't hear him on Skype, and I have Twitch muted.
Here, let me check. Oh, okay. It looked like I was muted on Skype.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, how that happened, I have no idea.
Inadvertent elbow, or?
Well, since my elbows are on the arms of my chair, it would have been extremely talented for them to somehow reach my keyboard. Did you hear my explanation about the background, the wallpaper, Susan?
Yeah, it's some area that starts with a P.
Pyrenees.
Renee. Alright, how is my volume?
Sounds fine to me, but I'm hearing you through Skype.
Yeah. Cavern Tourists, how's my volume? Can you guys hear me okay? I think I usually turn it up to... Yeah, I think I usually turn it up to 70. Let me crank it up. If it's too loud, you guys will let me know. How's that? Is that better? Is that better? Hello? Well, Laura does most of the talking, so his voice is far more important.
Let me go ahead and, since we've had plenty of time to look at the wallpaper, let me turn on the game.
Tune it for the birds, yes. I'm gonna go AFK for coffee.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. We have 12 people in the cavern, but the stream says that there are 20 people watching. And I have not been paying attention to the chat. Let me... Adagoat is asking if the fan ages are canon since they're in the game now. And that's kind of loose. I don't think anyone's actually tried really to fit them into the overall narrative. They do have background stories of a sort, but they're not part of the DRC narrative, and they're not part of Yisha's story. Hello, Darlene. Nice to see you made it. Yeah, Unwritten is now part of the expanded universe. Although, Unwritten is one of those things that I've always been of two minds about. It's a great role-playing game, but the thing is that they made up a lot of their own stuff, and the maps that they use are highly inaccurate. So while basically, in other words, Unwritten should be enjoyed for what it is, and not used as source material if you're actually studying the game history.
I'm back. With a cough drop instead of coffee.
Well, they both have the word cough in them, so what the hey?
Exactly. Oh, I see we have a new tourist. Sky is blue. Welcome.
I'm not sure if Caver and Cave Woman have been around very much before either.
Yeah, sometimes they have computer issues. Welcome, Cavers. They regularly attend Arte's Story Night.
Ah, okay.
Welcome back, attaboy.
What I'm loving about the new version of the game installer is that now I can install the game and actually just play it instead of having to go hunt half a dozen Windows XP files to get it to work.
Oh wow. Windows XP? What?
What happened was that the Uru game installer was dependent on a number of files that were present when Windows XP was around in the Windows installation, but when Windows moved on, after a certain point, they stopped including those particular files in favor of more up-to-date ones. But the game depended on those files, so you had to go and hunt them up manually and add them to the URL folder in order to get it to work.
Oh wow. Murphac, is Maribot in the right place?
Let me... Okay, I have shut down the music.
We've got 4 minutes.
Yep, so it's about time to start making announcements.
Alright, welcome everyone to our monthly Cavern Tour. Please everyone welcome back Murphac, who wasn't able to be with us last month. Woohoo, he's back. A couple things that are very, very important. First of all, that you all have buddied Maribot by typing /add buddy 32319. I'm going to go ahead and type that in the chat. This is so Maribot can port us around. And today's tour will go to areas that are fairly large. And so you want to make sure you stick with the group. In case you get separated from Larry or from the group, you can just PM the phrase, quote, find Larry, end quote, to Maribot, and you'll be instantly linked to Larry. You can do the same for me by typing find Susan or find CT. Sorry, my voice is a little
No
garbled.
problem. So is mine.
I hadn't second on this cough drop. Do you have any more comments to add, Larry?
I will say that the insistence that we had on everyone sticking together was so that people were in voice chat range back in the days when we were using the game chat in order to conduct the tour. So it's less important these days.
Okay. There is, as Larry mentioned, there is one thing that's very, very important, is that you avoid climbing ladders. Sometimes with such a large group and one age, the game can get borked if you do that, and sometimes you can even get stuck on a ladder.
In this one, it's guaranteed almost.
Yeah, that
this
happened
tour
last year, I remember.
Yeah.
So, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess, when we used to have our old tours. So, with that said, let's go ahead and I'm going to send out one last shout out to my Cavern Tour buddies.
Oh, we're up to 36 viewers on the stream so far.
Great.
Well, technically 35 because one of them's me.
Another thing that's nice about Discord is, in the event we get kicked out of the game, we can still communicate.
That was another problem we had in the old days, was because we were using game chat. If we were separated, there was no way to speak to everyone else.
Alrighty, with that said, if everyone could please PM the word link, L-I-N-K, to Maribot, we'll link to our first tourist location. Got just a few stragglers here in the hood.
Okay.
Actually, a total of 6, including me.
Where did that come from? Attaboy 20 said in chat, just remember, every time you ask about Myst VR on PC, Yavo kills a squee.
Oh dear, that's just too cruel. Well, one person says the link's not working, the other two aren't responding. While I'm helping her, you want to go ahead and get started?
One thing that she can try is instead of saying link to the bot, she can try the word meet, M-E-E-T.
Okay. Oh, don't type /link, just type the word link.
Anyway, while she's rounding up stragglers, we may as well get started. Today's tour is going to be about all of the Bahro caves. Bahro caves are special locations that the Bahro appear to have constructed for Yisha's quests. They're not places that they actually lived. The appearance of the caves resembles ceremonial locations that were found on their home world, the Spiral Age. And let's see, I forgot to get the images, but hang on just a second and I'll give you an example of what we're talking about here. Okay. Here we go to our scripts. Okay, if you'll all look at the stream window for a moment in your web browsers, I have up a picture of a location in the Spiral Age called the Whirlpool Room. And that'll give you a good idea of what I mean when I say that these caves were all designed that were made to look very similar to places that they were familiar with from their home world. And perhaps even more to the point is another location called the Ring Room. You know, Attaboy is asking, what was the point of the Bahro coming to Earth if they still lived on their home world? And the answer to that is that they didn't have a choice. Somehow or other, someone from the Dini Empire at some point in history, which is unknown, gained control of a tablet that the Bahro were all somehow connected to. And that allowed them to order the Bahro to do things. And one of those things apparently forced them to live in in places where the Dini told them to live. That would be places like Nolabin, the Caverns, and an age called Todelmer. Those are all ones that I know about off the top of my head. Since adult Bahro could link at will to anywhere they wanted, and even to a certain extent control time, there was no bar or cage that could hold them. But on the other hand, yes, that somehow or other, in a method that I do not know, that tablet allowed you to issue them orders that they could not disobey. Attaboy, it is the tablet from Myst 5. Okay, anyway, let me go ahead and get that picture out of the way. Now, something that you may or may not have realized for yourself, the Bahro only ever made 3 caves. The one that we're in was used as an introduction to Yisha and her quest. The Hourglass Cave was used as a waypoint in her Path of the Shell quest and contains a petroglyph history of part of Yisha's life. And then there was a cave in a cavern called Radenna, which served as an endpoint for many of her other quests and also provided rewards for those who completed them. As I mentioned a moment ago, there is no sign that the Bahro ever lived in any of the caves. Instead, they just seem to hang around abandoned places in the cavern, such as the Great Shaft and Cavern. They have been observed foraging for food in the upper levels of the Great Shaft, where they would eat pretty much anything that they could find, and that includes grubs and insects. This cave is located under a tree at the end of the cleft. This cave was excavated for Yisha, and inside it, of course, we all know there is a pedestal. That pedestal originally held a copy of the Relto book for explorers to collect. However, later on, Yisha began to pass out Relto books directly to those she called, and so excuse me, let me get my thoughts in order here. The pedestal held a Relto page that added pillars for the path of the hand to Relto, rather than being the book itself. On the walls of the cave, we find several Bahro petroglyphs. The first one, which is off to my side and flashing on and off, is Yisha's monogram, which some people also call a mandala, although it isn't. This petroglyph is a monogram of her name, which is surrounded by stylized birds, books, and spiral hands, and the book is contained in a mountain shape, which is probably meant to represent the cleft volcano. Let's go ahead and move into the other chamber now. The second monogram, which is found as you walk in, it would be about at the 5 o'clock position, is a Bahro portrayal of Yisha, which was drawn in the style that they preferred. It's more representative than being something that's actually meant to resemble her. Then counterclockwise, the next symbol is a spiral, and that symbol is actually one that belongs to the Bahro. Attaboy is saying that it seems like Yisha is holding a spear, and no, Briggs is correct, it's a walking staff. Anyway, Yisha used this particular symbol a lot when she was talking about, or the Bahro were portraying, her version of the art of writing. However, it is a Bahro symbol rather than one that she invented. You'll be seeing more of that symbol later on in the tour. Next, going counterclockwise, I wish we could, Briggs, but that's impossible since it was never made. Anyway, the next symbol is a open book with Yisha's name written in a circle on it, and it surmounts a cross. We're not exactly sure what this symbol was meant to get across, other than the fact perhaps that Yisha was a talented writer. But it does appear in other glyphs that we will see later on. Oh yes, the Spiral Age was a place that the Denis visited, and which the DRC had at one point intended to restore and release. The next symbol is a representation of the Denis Cavern, which has what appear to be 3 Bahro sitting up on top of the glyph. This was kind of a representation of them watching over what the events in the cavern while hiding. As for why they flash on and off, that's an answer. That is something I cannot answer. It's just something that they chose to have them do. The next symbol, of course, is the cleft volcano, which, of course, is kind of a major crossing point for a great many important events in the history of both the fall of Denis and the DRC, and, well, the fall of Denis, events that took place before Atris tried to restore Denis himself, such as the events of Riven, and also it's a central point in the history of the DRC. Okay, Well, I've been fielding a few of them on the fly there. Do we have any questions about anything that I've covered up to this point? That's unknown. Bahro were afraid of a certain species of snake on Nolobin, and we don't know exactly why. Either the snakes were venomous to them because they seem to pose no danger to humans, or else being bitten by one might have caused something that was extremely undesirable for them. However, you look at it, they were terrified by those snakes, and not only would they not go near the snakes themselves, they also would not even go to an area where a warning sign of a snake had been drawn. Philip, that's something we're going to be looking at. Okay, that looks like it's it for the questions at the moment. So, our next destination is the Hourglass Cave, which is going to be one of the longest parts of this tour. Murphak, anytime you wish to link us to the Hourglass Cave, go right ahead. And while we're waiting for Murphak to do his magic, one thing that I can say about the Bahro is that a lot of their history and details about who they are and how they do things and why they do things is information which has not yet been released. I once asked about that and was told that it was still considered privileged information, possibly because at some point in the future, Cyan may wish to go back and revisit that storyline.
Is there an official name for the Hourglass Cave?
No, there isn't. It's as far as the story is concerned, it's just another cave. They don't have official names for any of the caves. One can hope that that's true, attaboy, that they'll make another installment after Riven. But that's only something we'll all find out when they actually do it. That's what I was just about to ask. Okay, go ahead and link to the bot.
Yeah, he's in what the game refers to as the Pellet Cave.
The location of the Hourglass Cave is a complete mystery. We know the physical locations of the other two caves. The Cleft Cave can be walked to just by climbing down into the cleft and going through the door at the end. The Radenna Bahro Cave is located in the ceiling of Radenna Cavern, something we know because our key devices told us so in the past, before that function was somehow disabled. However, the Hourglass Cave does not register on a key at all. If you bring your key up, you will see that instead of a name, there's just 3 question marks. The upper part of this cave is similar to the one in Radenna, but the hole in the floor does not drop down into the large cavern. Rather, it opens into a lower cave where we are now, which has a pond in the center that contains the same algae that lives in the Denis Lake. It was once possible for a single person to drop a pellet and view the cave markings. Yisha left a diagram in Annonay showing it as a clue for explorers following the path of the shell. And let me go ahead and bring that up. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. If you switch over to the stream window, I now have a copy of the piece of paper that she left in Annonay up for display. On the paper, you see the number 625, which is in a white circle off to one side of the cave diagram. Yes, please, Murphak, do remove the collision wall around the pool. That number 625 is a measurement in Denis time. It was the delay between when you could link a pellet into the chamber and it would remain suspended in the air until the time that it fell into the pool. In surface time, that was 15 minutes. Whatever method she used to delay the drop is no longer working, so now the pellet falls immediately and you have to already be here in order to see the wall markings displayed. The other things that you see on the diagram include Bahro, a few Arabic numbers and symbols, and I should say a few Arabic numbers and symbols which are in the Bahro form of writing. When most people visit the lower half of the Hourglass Cave, they're focused on copying the cleft viewer settings and don't notice that there are 17 petroglyphs on the walls. These petroglyphs are like the viewer settings in that they only appear in the light given off by a dissolving food pellet. The petroglyphs chronicle important events in Yisha's life, beginning from when she leaves Tomana on her journey of self-discovery, and, excuse me, I forgot to take the symbol now, or the image, okay. beginning from the time when she leaves Tamana on her journey of self-discovery. Dr. Watson discovered that Yisha left notebooks behind in the Great Shaft that cover many of the events shown in the petroglyphs, and a few things that are not. So the story the 17 glyph sequence covers is better documented than any other Bahro glyphs found in the ages or caverns. In 2006, an explorer named Brett Middleton conducted his own studies of the Hourglass Cave glyphs based on work done by the Bahro Glyph Study Group. He used their methodology and many of their preconceptions, but his analysis is detailed and imaginative. However, he did draw a number of erroneous conclusions. One mistake, of course, that he made was to call Yisha's monogram a mandala. A mandala is quote-unquote, his definition of mandala was a decorative form of Denis writing usually represented in a circular frame that joins the letters of a name or word through overlapping and shared strokes. The mandala may be set within a decorative border. To the best of my knowledge, the term mandala was first applied to this form of writing by Blade Lakem in the DLF forums in June of 2004. In reality, a mandala, meaning circle, is a spiritual and ritual symbol from the Hindu religion, which represents the universe. In common use, mandala has become a generic term for any circular geometric pattern that represents the cosmos. It has nothing to do with writing. Another difference from something I told you before is that Brett calls the identification mark the Bahro use the weeping eye or the crying eye, rather than the Bahro Glyph Study Group's term mourning eye. Okay, let's see. Where's the first glyph? Actually, why am I looking for it? There it is. Okay, Murfak, if you can, please isolate the first glyph. Thank you. You got that before I even finished the sentence. Okay. He numbered hang on just a sec, am I on the right one? Yeah, okay. He used a numbering system for his analysis, and in that system, he called the first glyph that we see on the wall there BC1. His analysis reads, Yisha leaves home. There's little difficulty in making a complete interpretation of this panel. The staff-bearing figure on the right has Yisha's name in monogram form overhead. Yisha's name is readable in Denis script, and we have seen this monogram in many locations, beginning with the wall at the bottom of the ladder leading down from the journey door in the cleft. The figure with the staff is also found beneath the cleft, and the combination of symbol and glyph identify Yisha beyond doubt. The two figures holding hands on the left represent Yisha's parents to a high degree of certainty, as confirmed by similar representations of Atris and Catherine in the Bahro glyph sequence found inside the caldera of the volcano. The monogram above Yisha and Catherine does not yet have a confirmed reading. Most linguists believe that it is the word home written in Denenglish. My own notes about this panel are, this is Yisha leaving Tomana as a teenager. Atris and Catherine are there to say farewell. My own speculation is that she spent a period of time wandering around North America before she eventually returned and settled down in the cleft. During that period, she would have traveled into what is now Utah and seen Newspaper Rock, a Native American pictograph site. Yisha left a copy of sections of Newspaper Rock glyphs in Eterkimo. The monograms in the image are, as stated, Yisha's name above her figure and what appear to be EHLM or EHOM above her parents. Either way, it's not the word home in English as Brett thought. She wrote about that time in in one of her journals, which she left in the Great Shaft. Alone. There is a powerful conjunction between the in and the out, the beneath and the above. A wound, a mouth, a well, a pit. I wanted to make the journey for myself from where the Denis dug upward, where they almost came to the surface. From the place where Tiana first climbed downward, and where father followed evil into the ground. I began my journey with a heavy burden. It was Tiana who came to Denis and caused its fall. I am from her. I feel I am destined to bring another destruction. Mother and father tried to prepare me, tried to tell me who they thought I was. I still see the power of each. I have the best of each, and the burden of each. And as they watched me leave, I saw the sadness and the fear, but more terrifying, I saw their hope. And I left my comfort to find me, and even as I took my first step away from Tomana, my shoulders ached for the burden I bore. Deep prophecies and weighty destinies, so much to learn and understand about myself. My father said we can never understand, we can only understand more. The more I understood, and the more powerful I became, and the more dangerous I became, the less I understood. Pausing for a sec. Briggs. The journals are from Myst 5. Moving on to glyph number 2, please, Murphek. Brett has had this to say about this glyph. Yisha arrives at the cleft. Again, a complete interpretation leaves little difficulty. The Yisha glyph and the monogram appear next to a volcano glyph, also seen in the cleft, and above a depression in which rooms and rope bridges can be seen. The panel contains numerous depictions of desert wildlife, including a roadrunner in the lower left, and a number of lizards, and an antelope. Note that elements of this glyph and the one before it can also be seen in panel VC7 in the caldera of the volcano, which is also reproduced on the cover of the 7th journal of Yisha and Myst 5. That journal is concerned with Yisha's departure from Tomana and desire to spend time at the cleft. And I don't have anything else really to say, except that when Yisha finally returned and started living in the cleft, she stayed there for a period that may have been years before she finally ventured down into the Denis Cavern. The next Bahro glyph, please, Murfak.
Larry, do you happen to have close-up photos of these glyphs on your Lost Library of Denis
Yes, I
website? Oh, great.
do. Yeah. Let me go ahead and type that address while I'm at it. Whoops. I set that to the bot. Let's see.
I copy-pasted the link.
It's it can be simplified to just www.florestica.com/h.
By the way, everyone, it is an awesome website. I highly recommend you check it out when you get a chance.
As an aside, since Cyan released the intangibles resources, I've actually found out more about some of the unreleased stages, and I now have a more complete article on the Spiral Age. And I also have a very detailed article about Datamne up right now. I'm in the middle of working on an article about an age called... oh, my mind's going blank. Well, I'm working on another one. Anyway,
Can I interject here real quick?
Mm-hmm.
There was a question where a cave woman PM'd you. Does Yisha actually believe Gen's propaganda that Tiana caused the fall in Denis?
She didn't, and she knows better. But after the death of Kalam, which we'll be talking about in this tour, Yisha's attitude about a lot of things changed, and she began kind of projecting her own faults onto the Denis Empire in general and her own family in particular. So it was after that point that she began kind of parroting the idea that the fall of Denis was caused by Tiana, instead of the fact that Tiana merely made certain aspects of Denis society percolate to the surface more soon than they would have. However, given the ambitions of Agaris, it's almost certainly that he would have acted in some way sooner or later. Attaboy, Denis didn't fall because of prejudice against Tiana. And that's something we'll be covering in another tour. But, like I said, her presence made existing conditions a little come to the surface and, a little more quickly than they would have otherwise. Okay, anyway, getting on to the... let's see, Murfak, the next glyph, please. We want the third one. Thank you. Brett said about this one, Yisha meets with the local Amarins. Tishel Trelawney has done extensive analysis of this panel relating to the component glyphs to the symbology of the Hopi, Zuni, and Navajo tribes that reside in that area of New Mexico. For example, the bear glyph above the head of the figure on the left is probably his name symbol. A detailed analysis of these symbols is beyond the scope of this presentation. It is not clear to me whether the fish is being given to Yisha or by Yisha, or what she might have had to trade with these people. However, it looks like there are feathers and a paint pot next to Yisha, and she may have used her artistic skills to create tradable artifacts, much as Anna did when living in the cleft. Of a special note are the 3 short parallel lines at each of the cardinal points of the panel. The symbolism of these is obscure to me, but similar elements can be seen in other glyphs, such as the 5th. It is possible they are somehow related to the 3 strokes of the crying eye glyph that will appear in some of the panels in this series. My own notes. This was Yisha trading with local Amerindians for food. Since Eddy County is located in the southeast corner of New Mexico, it's quite likely that the natives in question are Shishinde, Mashkalinda. These are bands of the nation called Mescalero Apache today. This was a practice that she would have picked up from the stories her parents told her of Anna, who did the same when she lived in the cleft. The natives would have known from stories that people living in the cleft had medical knowledge and other forms of wisdom that would be valuable to them. The symbol above Yisha's head is a monogram of her name. The symbol above the native in the foreground probably also represents his name, and is fairly typical of Southwest design, representing a bear. Since it is the only object of its color in the picture, it would be fair to guess that his name was Yellow Bear. And then let's move on to the next glyph, please, Murphek. Number 4. Brett's notes about this one. Yisha studying/practicing the art. 2 different enhancements of this panel are shown to help bring out some of the varied details in this complex image. This is the first panel in the sequence to present serious difficulty to the interpreter and almost seems to be out of order in the sequence. Murphek will be changing the background color, by the way, to bring up certain details. Say they're easier to see with different background colors. In the center of the panel, Yisha is writing in a book. It is uncertain, however, as to whether she is writing an age or simply recording her experiences. However, the linked star pattern beneath her is also seen on the floor of the Nexus Age and in various places in the Denis Cavern, and may be yet another symbol of the art. Yisha is surrounded by the glyphs of 12 books with inscribed symbols, which we will see again in later panels. The books are surrounded by Denis numbers that do not appear to be numbers of significance, and there are 3 lines of Denis script below Yisha. Unfortunately, many of the letters are difficult or impossible to read, but the lines do not seem to form words. Within the circular frame are a number of remarkable elements drawn in white, best seen in the second enhancement of this panel. At the top of the frame is the crying eye glyph. next to the glyph of a Bahro that appears to have a crying eye on its chest. These elements are reminiscent of the Bahro gathering scene behind the bamboo grove in Ederkimo, and are included in many other Bahro glyphs. These two elements are flanked by symbols that remind one of symbols seen in Nolabin. Between the crying eye and Yisha is a representation of the Denis Cavern, which contains the three central figures from another glyph in Ederkimo that is found to the right of the journey door. There appears to be a book symbol, possibly the symbol of the maintainers, above the head of the center figure, which also exists in the chemo version when it is examined from the proper distance. On the left side of the frame is a register that contains elements of the Garrison panel in the chemo fountain sequence. On the right side of the frame, there appear to be some animal glyphs reminiscent of the elements of the chemo puffer garden sequence. With a couple of exceptions, the elements outside the frame are all related to other scenes found throughout Ederkimo. The first exception is the figures to the right lower left containing the Annonay spheres from Ederkimo. The large figure with the circle on his chest is almost identical to the figure on the right of the central figure that's next to the journey door, but with the addition of a glow around the head, a number of follower figures. These figures are placed closely enough to the Annonay glyph symbol that they are almost certainly part of the same register. The second example is on the center right of the glyph, depicting a figure in a glowing arch or doorway above a book with a symbol connecting the left and right pages. Some believe that this is another representation of Yisha, as the figure is more similar to the usual Yisha glyph than it is to other glyphs representing humans, but I am far from convinced of this interpretation. The most difficult aspect of interpreting this panel is in understanding why the Bahro glyphs of Ederkimo are represented here, if the panel is in its proper place in the sequence. By Yisha's own words in her End of Ages journals, she did not learn about the Bahro until much later in her journey, as we will see. Does this scene simply foreshadow the knowledge she is soon to gain of Denis history and the practice of the art? My own note. Yisha, in this symbol, Yisha is exploring Denis and the linking books to other ages. The pattern she is sitting on is the central plaza tile design from residential neighborhoods. This is a common design found in many other places as well. The age symbols around it are clockwise from about 10 o'clock, Kadesh Tulesa, Rebek, an unknown age, Kalo, another unknown age, Teledon, and Annonay. These are indeed the same glyphs that are found in the age of Ederkimo. The glyph has white markings overlaid on it that are hard to see, but if the colors are enhanced, clockwise from 12 o'clock they are the symbol for sadness with a Bahro, what appear to be various animals, Denis letters, the age of Garrison. In the center is the Denis Cavern, and what appears to be the same figures around found next to the Bahro portal gate in Ederkimo. At this point in Yisha's history, it's most likely that this was when the Bahro first noticed Yisha and began watching her. Okay. Next symbol, please, Murfact, number 5. Going back to Brett's notes, Yisha travels to Denis. Yisha begins her journey by entering the volcano at the cleft, and it appears that she slept at least once on the long journey. She also encountered some interesting creatures. Bats, both flying and hanging from the ceiling, are represented in the upper right of the panel. Frogs seem to be represented on the left side. In the center, there is some sort of creature which appears to have chelae, possibly a variety of scorpion or spider, or some arachnid completely unknown to surface dwellers. When Yisha reaches the cavern, she meets a person that scholars formerly call teacher or book. We now know from the End of Ages journal, number 8, that this is a master writer named Callum. Rather than a monogram, Callum is identified by a book glyph, which the Bahro seem to have typically used to identify writers such as Atris. Note that his ID glyph has 3 parallel strokes at each of the cardinal points, as did the third panel in this sequence that we saw a few minutes ago. Although this panel depicts Callum as meeting Yisha on her arrival, we know from her journals that she spent a great deal of time alone in the cavern before encountering Callum in the library on Agra Island. A group of Bahro around a crying eye is depicted just above the cavern. This corresponds to the representation of the cavern that we saw in the cleft. And moving on to my notes. This sequence does indeed show Yisha meeting Callum, who was a survivor of the fall of Denis and a master of the art in the Guild of Writers. It shows her traveling through the tunnel system to the Denis cavern beginning at the cleft. Yisha traveled down the great shaft to the tunnels just like her great-grandmother, grandfather, and father before her. In Yisha's journals, she wrote, "Home was far behind. I was no longer a child. I journeyed deep, deep within myself, deep within the earth, down to the Denis cavern. I was alone for a time as I consumed my heritage, breathing deep the air of the cavern and the knowledge of my people. But the desire for companionship drove me mad. I engaged a cinnabar as my confidant, and a treadfish in the harbor became my younger brother. I spoke to them as family, and they answered. I swear they answered. Then my mind took a final step into madness when I walked into the library on Agra and saw an old Denis man on the floor below me. Now I was imagining people to ease my loneliness. But he was no mirage. His name was Callum, and he was our Denis writer of ages." Going over to the stream for a moment, I'll show you the 2 sketches that Yisha made of the animals that she sort of adopted in the cavern. And did I not move those? Why do I never remember to move those into that folder? Okay. This will take a moment. Okay. This is the animal that she calls a cinnamar, which is similar to a monkey. She didn't draw the entire body of the treadfish that she found in the Denis Harbor, but she did draw its face, if you want to call it that. Okay. And I'm going to pause for just a second. Did we have any questions that you took note of while I was reading?
No, I didn't see any. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, some were pondering whether our molecules tear apart when we link, but they were just joking. That monkey that she drew, it looks a bit like the one in Negalon.
Actually, no. The two-tailed
could it
monkey
be?
is quite a different animal, and
Oh.
may not even be a mammal.
Oh.
It seems to
interesting.
have some slightly insectile characteristics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Here, let me bring the Cinnamar back up. So you see that this creature is furry and has normal eyes, a distinct nose, and what look like 3 toes on its feet, and probably an opposable thumb. It's a little harder to see his hands. Excuse me, I forgot to actually show that to you. Sorry.
I think does he have suckers on his fingers? Oh, I'm talking about the Negalon one. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So this is a Cinnamar, and
He looks kind of like a koala too.
it has some resemblance to it, especially around the ears, maybe. And now let me see if we go to Cottage, Nicolon, and here we have the two-tailed monkey from Negalon, which is we know in Denis is called a pummy. Let's see if I can get him in frame entirely.
Oh
There we
yeah, I
go.
forgot about those red bug eyes.
Yeah. And then he has that large crest on his head, which has a skin flap on it. So the cat. Also, you'll notice that he only has three digits, 2 front facing and 1 rear facing on his arms and legs.
So she encountered that ape-like creature in the cavern?
Yes. There are actually quite a few animals in the cavern, more so, and tunnels, more so than you might suspect. The Denis, just like people everywhere, were quite fond of pets and would bring animals to live with them in the caverns, some of which, of course, would escape and make their own lives. Okay, going back then to the glyphs. Murphac, glyph number 6, please. And here we see the Bahro spiral again. Okay, Brett's notes. Foreshadows. This is perhaps the most baffling panel in the sequence without even the most rudimentary interpretation in which we can place confidence. It is very unusual for a baroglyph to be so uniformly abstract and symbolic, with few elements on which we can hang the beginnings of a concrete interpretation or even a representative name. For example, some have interpreted the generic human figures as followers of the grower on the path of the shell. Yet at this point in the story, Yisha does not know she is the grower and has no followers. Likewise, Yisha's arrival in Denis has already been depicted, so it is hard to interpret this as representing her descent of the great shaft, with the smaller figures representing her progress. Spirals of various types are probably the most common and important symbols encountered in baroglyph studies, and a spiral is certainly a central feature of this panel. The same dotted spiral is seen in the cleft. The spiral often seems to symbolize a return to the beginnings and the path of water flowing down to the roots of the great tree. Perhaps this panel simply symbolizes Yisha's return to beginnings and foreshadows those who will one day follow her on that path. Yisha is surrounded here by a glorious glow, difficult to see unless it's enhanced. And we will see again in other contexts, in later panels. Furthermore, her monogram is now contained in a book glyph, a theme that will be seen again in panel number 10, but it is a plain book here. Perhaps this symbolizes her limited knowledge of the art at this point in her journey, or is another foreshadowing of later events. For my own sake, I agree that it's unclear what the glyph represents, but it may be concepts and philosophies that Yisha has developed regarding the writing of ages. This spiral first appeared in the Bahro cave in the cleft, and will be shown again in later glyphs. It is always associated with Yisha. We do know one thing now that we did not know before, though. That's the spiral symbol, although it becomes associated with Yisha by the Bahro, was probably not one that she used for herself. We do know that that it does represent Bahro concepts, however, and has nothing to do with Denis teachings or methodology. Murphac, glyph number 7, please.
Maybe I missed it, but they're commenting that that's the spiral from the great tree, but it's not, I don't think. I think the spiral from the great tree is the path of the shell spiral.
Yes, it is.
Right?
That's correct. The Denis never used spirals as part of their symbology. They were more likely to use geometric patterns and stars. Let's see. The spiral that you find in the tree sculpture of the Watcher's Pub was one that was put there by the Bahro. So that, again, that was not something related to the Denis. And at one point, yes, that actually did link you, I believe, to Cavern before there was a direct link. And after that, and from Cavern, there was a linking book to Myst. Yes, the Path of the Shell was... Actually, I take that back. The Path of the Shell was not invented by Kadish. The Path of the Shell is mentioned in Words, which was written by the Watcher. People who wished to become the Grower, or and tried to prove that they could fulfill the prophecies, always adopted the Path of the Shell because it was mentioned in Words.
However, this hourglass cave is related to the Path of the Shell.
Actually, no. It's related. It was made for Yisha's version of the Path of the Shell, not Kadish's. Okay. Anyway, moving on to glyph number 7. I believe. Yes, we are there. Brett said about this one, Yisha and Callum at odds. This panel represents the initial philosophical gap between Yisha and Callum from End of Ages Journal 8, in which Yisha said, "Trust did not come easily. There was conflict between us, between the ancient rules of Denis that I did not respect, and my creativity, which he feared. We fought and feared and battled and screamed." On the left of the central chasm, Yisha is again standing on the spiral symbol, surrounded by images of desert life and other more obscure markings. This register represents Yisha's free-thinking, imaginative approach to the art, drawn from her heritage and previous experiences. On the right of the chasm stands Callum, with orderly tables of the Denis numbers and letters above his outstretched arms. Above his head is a series of 12 book glyphs, arranged in a square. There may be some kind of symbol contained within this square, but it's hard to make out. This register represents the disciplined, rule-bound approach to the art followed by the Denis Writers Guild. My own thoughts on this? Yisha and Callum argued a lot in the beginning of their relationship. You see the spiral symbol of Yisha's beliefs and a chasm separating it from Callum's ideas, which were all about the ironclad rules and traditions of the Denis art. Yisha counted herself very fortunate to have met Callum. Her own training in the art came from her parents, who were self-taught based on initial training by Gen, who himself was self-taught after having only received a short introduction to writing just before the fall of Denis. Callum was a fully trained master and was able to teach her things she would never have learned otherwise. To give you the full quote from the journal, "Trust did not come easily. There was a conflict between us, between his ancient rules of Denis that I did not respect, and my creativity which he feared. We fought and feared and battled and screamed until exhausted, we began to learn from each other. We learned of the power of both, just as mother and father had done." Glyph number 8, please, Murphek. And Brett said about this one, Yisha and Callum at peace. Yisha and Callum had worked out their differences and began to study each other's methods. Again from Journal 8, We began to learn from each other. We learned of the power of both, just as mother and father had done. Tables of Denis letters and numbers are shown in the top and bottom margins, reminiscent of something one might see around the background of an elementary school classroom. Again, the tables of letters and numbers are shown flanking Callum's name symbol. The same square of 12 books is shown above Callum's head. However, one of the books has been moved to the side, and the area in the center has been replaced with some of the glyphs surrounding Yisha in panel number 7. A waterfall of knowledge or enlightenment appears to be pouring from the center of the square on Yisha's head. Through her journal, though her journal makes it clear that the knowledge flowed both ways. My own take? Callum and Yisha eventually came to an understanding, and Callum began to train her, filling in the rather large gaps in her knowledge. By the end of their relationship, he was learning almost as much from her as she was from him, which is represented by the symbols of their styles being melded in this glyph. Yisha wrote about this, "So I learned to write with all the skills that the Denis had known, beyond what my parents had taught me. For their lessons were given by a flawed instructor and their own trial and error. I learned to write from a master, an opportunity father was never given." Glyph number 9, please, Murphek. Jamie's asking, do we have a list of the rules? And no, there is not a complete list of the rules of writing that are written any place. I can tell you that there are a few of them. To give you an example, when writing an age, one had to follow, for the most part, set procedures when one was an apprentice. You could not be creative on your own because the Denis viewed that as being extremely dangerous. You could, not just for people who might visit the age, but if the age had had an intelligent population, a poorly written book could destabilize their entire world and cause disasters to them. This was proven by to Atris when he visited an age that had been written while he was training under Gen, and he found that the age had become enclosed by a barrier of mist or fog, and the people inside, their resources and ways of life were being very badly affected by being part of that age. This was also proven again when Gen wrote the Age of Riven, his 5th age. And he tore apart a large island into 5 pieces in doing so. Okay, getting on to the glyph. Brett's notes are, learning continues. Yisha and Callum became closer. Yisha's monogram and Callum's glyph are now side by side between the two figures. The 12 book symbols have spread out and are now more intermingled with the symbols of Yisha's creativity. Both of these elements show the growth of friendship and the blending of their approaches to the art. However, the background contains an incomplete version of the Nexus pattern in which the triangles are not fully linked, possibly indicating that the blending is not yet complete. My note, the relationship continues, and Yisha becomes a master of the art, writing ages that are wonders to Callum. Her work also shocked and astonished other surviving Denis writers. What Callum may not have known was that Yisha had also found others to train her. The Bahro had their own version of the art of writing, and at this point they began teaching her their methods as well. Her note about this in her journal was, Callum's abilities were breathtaking. He knew all the Denis knew from when Denis fell. But I taught as well as learned. There were things that the Denis were forbidden to write, words they feared, concepts they shunned, rules and boxes. I had no cultural fear of such things, so I dug deeper, asking questions that Callum could not answer. Moving on to Baroglyph number 10. Brett's note on this one is, Yisha and Callum grow together. The basic meaning of this panel is clear, although some of the details of the symbology may remain mystifying. Yisha and Callum have fully integrated their philosophies and cemented their friendship. The name symbols of Yisha and Callum are now merged, as is also seen in cleft glyph in the cleft. The background, not visible in this version of the image, the one that I'm in his notes, contain a completed version of the Nexus pattern. They begin to work together to extend their knowledge in new directions and begin to grow the tree. In Journal 8, so I dug deep, asking questions. Okay, I already read that part to you. Oh, excuse me, but there's more here. Okay, so I dug deep, asking questions that Callum could not answer, and together we sought answers. That is how we learned of the Bahro and the tablet. I learned of power. We grew in knowledge and strength, and Callum became one of my dear friends. To the right of the merged name symbols is another figure that resembles those shown with Yisha on the spiral in panel 6. To the left is a symbol resembling a square monogram, but it begins with a spiral rather than a Denis letter, and the letters do not appear to be a meaningful word either in Denis or English. The outer border of the panel contains 8 of the book glyphs from panels 4, 7, and 7 through 9, interspersed with Yisha's desert life glyphs and glyphs representing Bahro. There are also 2 more of the square monograms, neither of which contains a meaningful word. The most intriguing element is the glow around the tree, which is the same one seen around Yisha in panel 6. Perhaps it symbolizes the grower, in which case its appearance in panel 6 is another instance of foreshadowing. The position of the glow between the characters may represent uncertainty over the identity of the grower. Yisha wrote in Journal 8, I began to think it was he who would be the grower. And my own note. At this time, Callum began to believe that Yisha might be the grower of prophecy, and Yisha eventually began to believe that as well. Yisha might have begun thinking of ways to free the Bahro from slavery at this time, since the Bahro are shown in the border around the scene. Strangely, when she first met Callum, she thought he might have been the grower. It is during this time that Yisha discovered the Bahro's plight. However, she may not yet have made contact and learned to understand them. Her journal entry was, and together we sought answers. That is how we learned of the Bahro and the tablet. I learned of its power. We grew in knowledge and strength, and Callum became one of my dearest friends. I began to think that it was he who would be the grower. Panel 11, please, Murphak. Brett's note about panels 11 through 17, which he calls the battle against evil, was these panels represent the most dramatic and exciting portion of the sequence. While the fundamental meaning of the subsequence is clear, each panel contains details that are almost maddeningly mystifying, and Yisha's journals from the end of ages are nearly silent concerning these events. We can only hope that the full story is someday revealed, clarifying the motives behind the battle and the methods used. This particular panel, Yisha and Callum meet evil. Yisha and Callum meet someone new in the cavern. The meeting appears peaceable, suggesting that the pair did not suspect the hostility that the newcomer would eventually reveal. The new figure is typically referred to as Evil Book or the Enemy, and has not yet been identified. He appears to be a writer, since his ID glyph is a book with outward-pointing arrows at the cardinal points. But Yisha's journals do not name him. Remarkably, he also appears to be wearing some type of headgear or helmet. The depiction of the cavern follows the usual symbolism, with the crying eye at the top of the cavern and groups of Bahro above the roof. Again, the intriguing glow makes an appearance in this panel, but it now surrounds Evil Book's ID glyph. If it symbolizes the grower, then perhaps Evil Book is someone who believes that he was pretending to be the grower. The book is already bigger than that representing Callum, and the arrows suggest a desire for expanding domination. And my own notes. Yisha and Callum meet another rider in the caverns. The larger book symbol with the halos and radiating lines may indicate that he was a surviving guild master of the Guild of Riders. Yisha never does mention him in her notes. Some explorers who have studied the glyphs nickname the person Evil Book, but there is no proof at all that he actually was evil. However, it's certain that the encounter was not a good one, since the scene is surmounted by the Bahro sadness symbol. There's a theory that the person may have been Guildmaster Kadish. Yisha spoke of having gone back in time to save his life. However, there is no evidence for that theory one way or the other. Indeed, due to later events, it would have been most unlikely. The only real note that Yisha makes about this event was, quote-unquote, "But evil will find you even in the depths of the earth, and Callum was murdered." Moving on to Baroglyph 12, please, Murphak. Brett wrote, Evil Book attacks Yisha. Evil Book finds Yisha alone and uses the opportunity to strike at her. Again, the globe surrounds Evil Book's ID glyph, but now it is black rather than white. 6 books are depicted on the enemy side of the panel. Was the art somehow involved in the conduct of the attack? What is the significance of the crossed lightning bolts arching towards Yisha? My own note. The man in this glyph seems to be angered by Yisha, probably because she is not following the laws of Denis and the rules of writing that the guild had used since the founding of the caverns. However, I believe that the markings here represent emotions rather than physical attacks, in other words, that he was berating her and haranguing her, or possibly even cursing at her, because she made him so angry. Glyph number 13, please. Callum joins the battle. Callum steps in and protects Yisha. The ID glyphs of Callum and Evil Book are juxtaposed within a circle that appears to be radiating energy. Perhaps this symbolizes that the contest was a writer's duel of some type, though the historical record does not give us any indications that such events occurred. There are 3 parallel wavy lines at each of the cardinal points of the circle, which may be related to other occurrences of the 3-line symbology. Yisha doesn't seem to be helping, as her monogram is over her head rather than being in the battle circle. Callum appears to be producing some sort of protective force field, similar to the one seen in Ederchemo 7 in Ederchemo, but the symbology is once again enigmatic, leaving us unable to explain the true methods of attack and defense that were employed. My own note is that this does show Callum leaping to Yisha's defense and redirecting the man's anger to himself. The arch of lines may represent his attempt to shield Yisha from the man's anger. The idea that he was employing an energy shield to protect her is unlikely at best. While force fields are not unknown in the Denis Empire, there are only 2 places that we can find them now: the Jalak playing grid and the space pod orbiting the planet in the Todelmer Age. Glyph number 14, please. Brett's notes say, Callum is killed. The skulls on the border of the panel are typical symbols of death, and Journal 8 states that Callum was murdered. So the panel clearly indicates more than simple defeat or injury. Evil Book's ID glyph is now bordered in black, another symbol of death. The meaning of the red dots flanking the glyph, 5 on each side, is elusive. Yisha's monogram is now dark instead of light, and is positioned above Callum's ID glyph, rather than within it or over her head. As well as symbolizing her sorrow over losing someone so close to her, the color may also symbolize feelings of guilt. In Yisha's 3rd Imager speech in End of Ages, she asks, "Did I ask to cause the death of Callum?" Would Callum have been left alone if he had not protected Yisha, or does her guilt run deeper than that because she is somehow responsible for the circumstances that led to the attack or made it possible? And what I have to say about that? This does show the enraged man killing Callum. This was a traumatic event for Yisha, and was fundamental to her later attitudes and actions. She became guilt-ridden, believing that it was her fault that he died. And there are many hints throughout her interaction with explorers that show that she never got over it. Moving on to glyph number 15, please. Brett wrote about this one. Yisha continues the battle. Yisha finds the courage and ability to continue the battle against Evil Book on her own. In Journal 9, she wrote, I learned of the fearsome power I wield on that day, the day of Callum's death. Evil Book appears to be sending minions of some kind to carry out his attack. Are these outworlders that he has either enslaved or allied himself with? They do not resemble the usual glyphs representing the Bahro. Or is this symbolism meant to be as abstract as the lightning bolts and the defensive shield in the prior panels? The 12 books usually associated with Callum are depicted to the left of Yisha. This may symbolize Yisha's use of Callum's knowledge in the battle, which more clearly involves the art in this panel and the next. The 2 books in the center of the panel appear to be Yisha's mode of battle, as a small image of Yisha is shown next to each. The 4 symbols of the pages of the top book appear as mirror images on the bottom book. The colors of the squares in the top book are reversed in the bottom book, and the 2 books are linked by lines. Most likely this is a trap of some kind intended to trick Evil Book and or his minions into choosing the wrong age out of a pair that superficially seem to be duplicates. And for my own take, in her grief, Yisha attacked the man. It's not clear how the battle was fought, although other explorers have published theories. This glyph seems to imply that both attempted to trap each other in prison ages. One thing is certain: there was no mystical aspect to the fight, since there are no record that indicates such a thing was even possible. Instead, it may have been a deadly game of hide-and-seek jumping from age to age. Since they were apparently trying to trick each other into using trap books, that's one way they might have done so. Panel number 16, please, Murfak. And Brett said about this one, Yisha triumphant. Yisha wins the battle against Evil Book. According to Journal 9, in a fit of rage I destroyed the murderer. However, the bottom portion of the panel seems to show Evil Book as simply being trapped in a book bearing the dark in light square from the top book in panel 15. It is not clear whether Yisha's use of the word destroyed is exaggerated, or whether the symbology simply fails to indicate Evil Book's true fate. Evil Book's ID glyph is either missing or has shrunk considerably. The triumphant Yisha is now depicted with the glow symbol, more radiant than ever, around her monogram. This adds support to the interpretation of the glow as representing the grower. Journal 9 says, I began to see that the prophecies of the grower might speak of me, though previously she had thought that Callum might be the grower. As in panel 9, the glyphs and symbols of Callum and Yisha are mingled on the left and right borders of the panel, indicating the full range of her knowledge. Okay, now for my take. The idea that they were using prison ages against each other is supported in this glyph. In the end, Yisha won and the man is shown trapped in a prison book. Yisha wrote about this. Power is a gift, power is a curse. I learned of the fearsome power I wield on that day, the day of Callum's death. In a fit of rage I destroyed the murderer, and I destroyed my innocence. And again I learned that most things cannot be returned to how they were. And my power continued to grow even as I began to see that the prophecies of the grower might speak of me. My destiny began to be fulfilled, but there was still more. The least. Abused, mistreated, misunderstood, ignored. They were mocked and scorned, and their hearts still show their pain, but they continue to serve. Such power they have, and yet they serve. They treated me with kindness, and I learned from them. They respected what I was becoming. With them I learned new laws, new rules, and new powers. I used the powers to care for a tree to come, and the tablet allowed me to grow beyond Tiana, beyond father and mother, beyond Denis, beyond Callum. The tablet held them. The tablet chained them. The tablet held me. The tablet empowered me. I watched with them. I waited with them. I learned with them. I called them from captivity and grew while they gathered. Together, we became both weak and strong. And then my time came. My time to take the tablet. My time to choose. I was ready. I felt the pull of holding it, of channeling and releasing the full power of the Bahro. I would right the wrongs. I would set things the way they should be. I would choose well. I could not fail. I am the grower. I was so sure, so strong, so wise. But I didn't open myself and listen to the maker. The noise of me drowned his quiet voice. And I failed. Failed to see anything beyond myself and what was obvious. The pain came quickly when I realized what I had done. The tablet returned and the Bahro continued to serve. The pain still burns me, but the powerful Bahro simply wait and serve. Pain is often how we learn, but it is not for us to give. We are not the teachers. We must not abuse them. We must not abuse the Bahro. Panel 17, please, Murphak. Panel 17, Yisha gathers followers. The called come to the cavern and learn from Yisha. Yisha's monogram and Callum's ID glyph appear separately above her shoulders as she sits at the root of the tree and beckons. 5 book symbols appear below Yisha's arms, but most of them appear blank. Perhaps the filled book represents the past, while the empty books represent the unwritten future. It seems odd that the glow and the spiral do not appear in this panel, which would help confirm my tentative interpretations of that no Bahro figures are depicted. Speaking for myself, this glyph probably represents Yisha enacting her plan to call explorers to come and travel to the Great Tree of Possibilities, and each to free a Bahro soul from enslavement. This plan fulfills a passage in Words of the Watcher, in which the Watcher referred to people called to the cavern as the gathered. Yisha herself eventually grew angry by the slow progress of the plan, and went so far as to insult the gathered who did not respond in a recorded message. Her exact words were, "Have I not become the grower? The grower. Yet all I grow is anger. Watching them call, watching them fail, waiting and watching. I am the grower. How can I wait much longer on such fools?" She spoke of watching each of her Bahro call for a gathered to come, and evidently it was not often successful, prompting her to label those who did not come as fools. A theory has been proposed that the people who hear Yisha's call have a trace of Denis ancestry. The possibility exists because there were a number of workers vanished early in Denis history while digging air ventilation shafts to the surface. However, it is purely speculation. There's no evidence that supports or refutes it. It goes along with the idea that the Ahmad people, whom Gen was visiting when he met and fell in love with his wife Keita, were also descendants of the missing Denis workers. Again, There's no evidence to support or deny the idea. Okay. We'll pause for just a second. Attaboy is asking, wouldn't the workers have been blinded by the sunlight of Earth? At that point in their history, they were fresh from Gardner, so their eyes were not yet adapted to living underground for centuries. Is the grower more or less a Denis savior? The grower was a person, yes, he's sort of the Denis Messiah, but he was only prophesied by the grower, I mean by the watcher. And even in Denis, while his book was popular, there was a great deal of skepticism about it. And so the people who believed in the grower tended to be kind of fanatical about it, but a great many other Denis didn't believe in it at all. Spatial K is asking, how large a population survived the fall and where did they go? The answer to that is pretty much the entirety of the population of the planet Garterne. They knew that the fall was coming and they had the technology to create linking books to new ages. The vast majority of the people of Garterne went to an age called Tyranny. But others, such as the Denis, in groups numbering thousands, split off from the rest of the population and went to their own ages in order to form societies that they felt were more appropriate. Yes, the Denis had more than their fair share of religious nutcases. Their history is littered with religious cults that all felt like only they could save the Denis people. Okay. Goodbye, Pink Elephant. And now, let's see, what time is it? 1:44. So we won't have time today to go to the final locations that I had planned. But I'm not quite done with this one yet. One thing I want to talk about is Evil Book. To close this analysis, I would like to venture deep into speculative waters and offer suggestion regarding the actual identity of Evil Book. This is Brett, speaking, by the way. My discussion will explore the supporting evidence for my contention, but will make little effort to be fair and balanced, though much of the evidence is certainly capable of other interpretations. Be warned. My previous theory regarding the identity of Teacher was quickly exploded by the release of End of Ages, so my track record is not good. I strongly suspect that Evil Book is none other than ex-Guild Master Kadish. My suspicion begins with Yisha's apparent fixation on the character. His age of Talessa is one of the 4 primary ages chosen to present the lessons of Yisha's first journey for the Called. His life permeates the lessons of the second journey along the path of the shell, and his death and rebirth are intimately involved in the climax of that journey. What makes this defrocked writer, minor merchant, and pathological liar so important? From Yisha's Bahro cave speeches in Uru, Ages Beyond Myst, only death can conquer a pride so strong. For Yisha, it was death that moved me to return. I submit that the source of her pride was the power she gained through her studies with Callum, and it was only Callum's death that could shock her out of it, making this statement a reference to the battle in this sequence. Yisha feels responsible for the death of Callum, though Evil Book killed him. From Yisha's third Imager speech in End of Ages, where she says, "Did I ask to cause the death of Callum?" I believe her pride led her to an act that ultimately resulted in the battle with Evil Book, which is why she feels responsible and why Callum's death was the cure she needed. If she did not feel responsible, then Callum's death would simply be a tragedy and not a lesson, and she has already told her that the lesson of death is about the consequences of pride. When did this prideful act take place? I suggest that her pride was at its greatest height in the first flush of discovering her power, and as she learned from Callum and taught him. What was this prideful act? The torn note written by Yisha and found in Kadish's empty vault is plainly written by someone in the grip of pride that borders on megalomania. From the fourth fragment, we have these words: "These are the powers of gods, and I now have this power." This note suggests that Yisha saved Kadish's life during her prideful period. Did Yisha then just leave him in the vault with no option but to link back to Denis and die there? Just to give him a nobler end than the one he originally chose for himself? Even that would demonstrate incredible arrogance on her part, but it seems unlikely. I suggest that she brought him forward in time to make use of his undoubted skills in the rebirth of Denis, so his end would not be the waste that she considered it, based on her scrawling on Kadish's last testament. Yisha's victory in the battle also resulted in a loss of innocence, according to her journals. In addition to pride, was innocence required to motivate Yisha's actions in the vault? I think the answer to that is yes. A sophisticated person would have thought twice about using such wondrous power to alter the history of someone of Kadish's character. I believe that it took a significant degree of naivety to save his life long after his death, and that Yisha was then naive enough to expect lasting gratitude and respect from the deceiver. This again suggests that the rescue of Kadish took place prior to Callum's death, as Yisha no longer had such innocence afterward. The vault note is in fragments. Why? I believe that Yisha later tore it up in angry remorse because her prideful act of saving Kadish's life went tragically wrong. If she had simply saved Kadish's life and let him go his own way, or if Kadish had gone on to do good works and be kind to widows and orphans, I don't see what reason she would have had to revisit the vault to tear up the note, or to add Telessa to her list of lessons about pride and death. Her proud act would have justified itself in this case. But these things became understandable if her act turned out to be a major mistake with a deadly impact. The glow symbol suggests that Evil Book considered himself to be the grower, or was at least a pretender to the grower's powers, assuming my interpretation of the symbolism is correct. This description certainly fits what we know of Kadish. Thus, Kadish would have had a strong motive to attack Yisha and or Callum once he found out that one of them might be a competitor for the title. This is especially true if Kadish had actually deluded himself into believing he was the grower. His hunger for power would have led him to try to wipe out any potential challengers, and he certainly couldn't have deceived Yisha or Callum into becoming followers. Kadish was originally a writer, as Evil Book seems to be. Evil Book's red costume is suggestive of the red cloak on Kadish's skeleton, and the pictured headgear is suggestive of the helmet found in the alternate vault. While these parallels are far too thin to stand on their own, I believe they do add to the weight of the other evidence. Again, that was Brett's interpretation, and I disagree with him strongly. Brett Middleton's theory about Kadish being Evil Book is an attractive one, and it is very popular among many explorers. The thing is the reason why I don't believe it is based on several reasons, but the most compelling one involves the time travel aspect. We know from her journal that Yisha did not learn the Bahro version of the art until after Callum was murdered. We know that that Callum and Yisha discovered the Bahro together, but she does not mention actually learning until after his death. It was the Bahro form of the art that allowed her to move time, and that meant that her project to rescue Kadish could not have been before Callum was murdered, but had to take place well after it. Knowing that, I simply cannot believe that Yisha would have gone back in time to the fall of Denis and rescued Kadish just so she could bring him forward in time to murder her mentor. There's also a statement that she made about reading the writer named Evil book. She said, but evil will find you even in the depths of the earth, and Callum was murdered. The key is how she phrased it. She said that evil found them, not that she brought evil to them. If she truly blamed herself for the event, I don't think she'd have said it that way. In the end, though, it's up to each and every one of you to decide for yourselves what you choose to believe about the event. All that matters, really, is that it was the second major traumatic event in her life after being betrayed by her older brother, Cyrus. And that event was instrumental in driving her to hate her Denis heritage. Up until then, she seemed to have a fair and objective view of their society. After that, she couldn't say enough bad things about them. And that will conclude today's tour. We'll be taking up the final part next month. Anything to add? And also, what announcements do we have to make about other events today?
Okay, our next tour, as I said in chat, will be Saturday, July 10th at 11 a.m. key time. As usual, that's Jamie's birthday, the day after mine, so we'll be a year older that day. Let me bring up my list of events as posted by the Guild of Messengers for June. Today is June 12th. I know we have our usual, the karaoke at 1600. We have Arte's Story Night at 1400. That's in Sano's Hood. TSAHNO's.
Are you sure that's 1400 or is it 13?
Well, it's always 14. Well, according to the Guild of Messengers events keymail, it's 1400.
The reason I'm asking is because I thought I saw something earlier today. Facebook.
Yeah, I'm going off of the Guild of Messengers publication. If it's been corrected, they must not have been notified.
Actually, I thought we had left an hour between, so you're probably right. And what I saw was a typo.
Okay.
It was something that Minnesunda had posted.
Oh, okay. Well, if she's still here, yeah, she's still here. Maybe she has announcements of her own. But anyway, the usual Saturday events are 1400 Arte's Story Night, 1600 karaoke party in the new Guild of Messengers pub, accessible through the Watchers. And 2330 is the repeat version of Arte's Story Night. Sometimes he tells the same story. Sometimes they're a week different. Minnesunda, do you have any announcements to make?
Spatial Case says that Discord is saying it's also 1300. So you might want to go to Sano's Hood right after this just to be certain.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's always been 1400. I just one quick comment about these glyphs. It's kind of a shame that all these glyphs having such a rich history, that this is the only place they're posted. And the only, this area here only seems to have one purpose in the game, which I won't mention because I don't want to spoil anything. But it just seems like we're in and out of here so quickly. It's just too bad these glyphs aren't posted elsewhere. Do you have any comments to make about that, Larry?
You bet. In order to see them normally, you have to have a friend repeatedly drop pellets for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is very difficult. However, thanks to Murrowbot, you do have commands to make them visible on your own. And that's something that you can do with pretty much at will.
Yeah, and I did look at your Florestica website. I tried to find where you have the close-ups, and I couldn't find them. I looked in caverns. I looked
What
in
you
ages.
have to look for the Hourglass Cave, and I believe that is a sub page of the article on either Urkana or Anone.
Okay, so if we look under florestica.com/HPOTD, and then we click on the Ages tab, and then we look under...
You go to Ages, and then let me check Anone real quick.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you go to Anone, and then there is a link to the Hourglass Bahro Cave.
Okay, click to Anone, and there's a link to the Hourglass Bahro Cave. Excellent.
Peace to you, mover of the least.
All right, with that,
7 more
good night,
journeys have moved
everybody.
you
Thank you
closer.
for coming, and we hope to see you next month.
I was seduced while in Denis. My humble darkness
Everyone,
lasted only a
please
short
give
time.
Larry-
before
Did
I
you
began
trigger
to
that?
bask in
She's
what I
just
could do,
screaming.
what I could write.
Yeah.
My gift, my path, the knowledge of my father and the dreams of my
But I
mother
don't think I
used
triggered
to
that
hold
myself.
In the darkness, in the weakness. I was aware of my power. You return again. Return to hear
What the
more.
heck?
Return for a third pillar.
Oh, that's...
It's an interesting
We're in the
cycle
cave, and
this
somebody
coming
touched the panel,
Giving and taking. Returning is what you must do,
I think.
for you have torn in half the very being of one of the least. You have heard their pain. Don't falter.
Okay.
The bones of Guildmaster Kadish speak louder than words.
Yeah, these are all the Bahro Cave speeches. I don't know why they're all going
The
off.
teachings of good King Negan, who required good citizens to cling to their treasure. This Kadish
Well,
you
my
see
tour is over. I don't
will
know
not give back.
what tour we're on now. Yeah.
He had long been one of the wealthiest of the Denis, owning more than he could possibly make use of. He built Aegis to protect the extra, and when the fall came, he clung to his possessions over all else. And so you see only death in his vault. Extravagant death. It is an image of Denis. The
Are you-
people of Denis didn't return easily. They only would take until all was taken from them in the Great Returning, the fall that destroyed them. Denis fell only a few hundred years ago. All of it was removed. And my journey was similar. I could write things that no Denis had ever dreamed of. My writing smashed barriers held as absolutes for millennia. I could change things, I could move things. I could control things. I learned beyond my parents, I learned beyond all. I wrote ages against any challengers, masters of the art, and they were beaten. I took all that I could hold. Only death can conquer pride so strong. For the Denis and for Yusha, it was death that moved me to return. All died. All but the least. The unproud. The Bahro considered themselves as dead already. And so they continued to watch Denis, always ready to give more away. And now they will return. Your journey has begun. You can't imagine how these small things affect the future, but someday you will. You will return. Many paths have brought me to this place. The path of my great-grandmother, bringer of destruction. The path of my grandfather, the rebuilder of pride. The path of my mother, writer of dreams. And of my father, my dear father, the caretaker of burdens. And I knew that at the end of such great paths must lay a great purpose. I returned to the cleft to find it. Cleft. The fissure in the desert, the wound in the earth, the path to things beneath the surface. It was there I sought to find my purpose. It was from there I came to know the dead underground city of Denis. These Denis people who are now gone came thousands of years ago to the shelter of the cavern to return to leastness. They found solace in their smallness in the dark. And so did I. But light is powerful in the darkness. Did you see the hidden caves and the cages? It is where the proud would keep the least. The least were only animals, after all. Animals that could think. They could be put to work or play. They could ease the burden of the proud and fill their free time with entertainment. Quietly as Denise slept, their lives were taken, because the proud make the rules. This wasn't the first time such a blasphemy was part of Denis. The histories whisper of it, like Fatub the Acher or King Asimlef. And even in this age, it may not be the last. And now to these pillars. These 4 pillars around you are the very being of the Bahro. You must take them. They will bring a great treasure to Relto, your age, the island in the clouds. Relto will be their keeper for only a brief time.
Are you done yet, Yisha? Oh, it seems like it. Okay. I was just saying, writing, the glyphs are all drawn by Bahro, and not being human, their art is quite different from ours. Okay, now if we can, let's see, let's try something here. Okay, everyone, you can use the Find Larry command if you want to. That's not coming through the screen, Darkwing Duck. Somebody's using the chat option in the game. And since the tour is over, no reason why they shouldn't. Evelyn, that's why I was saying if you tell Murlbot find Larry, it'll take you outside of the Bahro cave. Those of us who use the command are on the outside looking in. No, the Relto book is disabled on this model. At least not unless you fall into a panic link zone. By the way, another option for getting outside
You
is...
return again.
Oh, Lord,
Return
not
to
again.
hear more. Return for a third pillar. It's an interesting cycle, this coming and going, giving and taking. Returning is what you must do. For you have torn in half the very being of one of the least. You have heard their pain.
Okay.
Don't falter. The bones of Guildmaster.
Okay. I just told Isha to shut up by using my game controls. I don't think that anyone's actually pressing the hand symbol. I believe that everyone's or it's just being triggered by us being linked back in here. Oops. Ah, yes. The infamous bird in the pod. What you would do is jump downwards so that you fall to a panic link zone. However, since we've been into something like this, you probably want to quit the game session and then log back in, because since you've been in a place where Murphac's been playing with the game models, they're going to follow you around in what's called a funhouse hangover. Again, I'm outside the cave, so if you want to get out here with me, you can just tell Murabot, find Larry. Because that Irwin... the Sanskrit is inside the pod because he wanted to be the one on the inside looking out for once. By the way, there is another more direct way to get out of here if you, without your Relto book. If you PM the bot 2 and then a location name, such as city, he'll take you directly to that place. The to city command takes you to the public version of Agra. Anyway, it's about time for me to go, so I'm going to bid everyone farewell, and I will see you all next month. Thank you all for coming and being patient with me. Bye-bye.